Just a minor heads up to anyone who may want to play the Commodore 64 version of this game. If you want to save your commander, you have to use the drive command @:: in order to overwrite files on the disk. The game will not indicate that it failed to overwrite the existing commander name. A bit of an oversight. So, yeah. Hence, blunder. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to not so much let's compare the Commodore 64 version versus the Amiga version of Elite, but more let's demonstrate the two different versions. Elite is a classic game that was made, I think, originally for the BBC Micro in 1900 and far too many years ago. It was ported to virtually every computer that existed at the time, and since I focus mainly on the Commodore 64 and Amiga, I'm going to be focusing on those two versions. Now, what is Elite? Well, Elite is a game where the aim is to reach Elite status. Was that helpful? Okay. I will go a bit more into details. You start as an aspiring pilot thing with 100 credits and the rating of being harmless. Your aim is to reach elite status eventually, and in order to do that, you need to earn a bit more than the 100 credits you have from the start. You always start in the same system when you start a new game, even, which is a system called Lave. There was a novella thing in the box, which told a very interesting story about this young guy and running around and flying around and exploring and secret things and all sorts of goodies, which are not referenced in the game in any way, shape, or form. Before I go any further, let me point out the Amiga version at the bottom of the screen. The absolutely epic pulse laser, once described by a reviewer as being roughly as effective as a sling with recoil splat. Yeah, that sounds about right. Anyway, back to the game plot. In order to earn money, you need to trade cargo, and there are various different sources that are more or less valuable. Oops. Double income in this on the Commodore 64 version. How very generous of it to want to share its missile loadout with me. Very pleasant. Anyway, I digress. I'm very good at doing that, by the way. There are different bucket load of different systems spread over the 7 galaxies, and each have their own political government system thing, and rich or poor. They can be agricultural or industrial. Agricultural planners usually pay good money for computers, but sell furs and things like that at a decent price, whereas industrial worlds usually pay good money for furs but sell computers cheaply. So, The most lucrative initial source of income is to buy first at agricultural worlds, sell them at industrial worlds, and then buy computers even at industrial worlds and sell them to agricultural worlds. The best combination is rich industrial, buy your computers there, take them to a poor agricultural, and sell the computers there. The prices will fluctuate, but by and large, that is probably the most reliable source of income. You can also trade in other goods which are more or less illegal, but truth be told, unless you are very lucky with a certain substance, it is hardly worth doing. Engaging into the most annoying, frustrating component of this game, which is the docking. Manual docking is fun. Doesn't matter how many hours you've played this game, you will still find yourself in positions where the docking just goes wrong, which I will happily demonstrate on the Amiga version. I'm skilled. Yes, I got all the skills. Not. When it comes to attaining as a rating of elite, you gain a rating by fighting other ships. Ideally, hostile ones, pirates, that kind of stuff. But it's up to you. If you want to be a horrible, nasty pirate, then by all means, go ahead, have your have your fun. But depending on how many vessels you shoot, you start getting higher rating. You start as harmless, and then you go to mostly harmless, poor, below average, average, above average, competent, dangerous, deadly, and finally elite. I have not reached elite status on any version, so I couldn't tell whether there's any um, changes to the game once you reach elite status. But that is the aim of the game. Hey, almost a perfect docking, huh? This one's better. Before going any further, I felt it was only appropriate to dedicate some full screen time to both versions, so I will be switching to the Commodore 64 version shortly in full screen and with a slightly improved commander and a slightly upgraded ship. While you're playing, from time to time, you can gain missions which are given by the Imperial Royal Navy thing, whatever project. And completing those missions will give you unique rewards. They seem to be somewhat random. On the Amiga version, I have bumped into 3 different missions, and on the Commodore 64 version, I bumped into 2 different. The first one is seemingly always the same. But by and large, you trade to earn money, and you fight other ships in order to gain rating. And that is basically the game. If you don't like grindy games, then this will probably not be for you. The different political systems in the different worlds will determine how likely you are to be attacked when visiting one of those systems. Multi-government confederacy. Confederacy is a middling one, but corporate state and multi-government and that kind of stuff, they are the more peaceful type of worlds. Whereas if you can find yourself a good feudal world or world governed by anarchy, then you can get into quite a few engagements, which means that you will add to your rating. This is always nice, of course, because of the fact that there are as many engagements as there are. you are just as likely to be blown to smithereens. Death by 1,000 cuts, basically. But I've always been a bit of an idiot, so let's go to this system. Won't be long before we get our first engagement. This, oh, by the way, is the military laser on the Commodore 64. The difference in lasers between the Commodore 64 and Amiga version is the fact that the Commodore 64 version's lasers are on average stronger than the Amiga versions, but the Commodore 64 version will be very happy to throw multiple enemy vessels at you at any given time, even when you're harmless, whereas on the Amiga version it is directly tied to your rating. As long as you're harmless, you will never bump into more than one enemy at any given time, except for if you go to something like a system governed by anarchy. Then, if you don't take down the first targets, other targets can bump in, and you can find yourself surrounded with the Amiga version of the pulse laser. Not recommended. Obviously, there's going to be a difference in the two versions because one of them is made on an 8-bit system and the other one is made on a 16-bit system. And if there was no major difference between the two systems from a technical point of view, that would be something horribly wrong. But I still find both versions very, very playable. They each have their own quirks and minor annoyances and nuisances, and I'm the best shot in the world. Haha, look at me. But to be honest, that's one thing I miss in modern gaming. Back then, you could play the Commodore 64 version of a game, and you could play the Amiga version of a game, or the um, Spectrum version of a game, or the Amstrad version of a game, or even console version of a game, and they would all be different. The core would be the same most of the time, but not always. But if it was good games, and there's no indication that just because it was good on one system, it would be good on another system. If in doubt, check out my Last Ninja 2 video. Ha 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 ha. But those games were very good. You had a chance to enjoy exactly the same game on multiple different systems. One good example for me would be Elite or Batman the movie. I can enjoy both these games on both the Commodore 64 and the Amiga. Modern day computers and consoles, it's roughly the same technology. So the only difference is the platform you played on. The games are the same. They look the same, roughly. They sound the same. They play the same. I kind of miss that time when the system differences were distinct enough that even the same game could play very, very different on multiple different systems. Oops. Let us switch to the Amiga version of Elite, and I will be loading the commander I have that has made the furthest progress on the Amiga side. I just realized, by the way, I was in the same system on both the Commodore 64 and Amiga version. What a coincidence. Anyway, as you can see, his rating is dangerous. I forgot to refuel. Naughty naughty. It's got quite a bit of credits. docking computer, ECM system, energy unit, and front military laser, which is very nice to have, trust me. I will be adding a section towards the end of this video where I quickly go through the individual upgrades you can buy and give a quick rundown of what they do. I found a feudal world, let's go and have some fun. There's some different options on the Amiga version. Docking computer fast, slow, docking the sequence on off. I switched it off to make launching and docking faster. One major difference between the Commodore 64 and Amiga version when it comes to gameplay is the docking computer. The docking computer is a piece of equipment you can buy that will dock your ship for you. On the Commodore 64 version, it will fly towards the space station and dock. Start to slow down here because here's something very important. Welcome to the Targoid. And welcome to the Amiga military laser. Targoids are some tough bother knockers, believe you me. And even though the military laser is quite powerful, if you look at the left side of the screen, the LT is the laser temperature. I nearly overheat my laser fighting a single Targoid. You can probably imagine what happens if you fight a Targoid and something else. Anyway, back to the docking computer. The Commodore 64 version, for some bizarre reason, sometimes believed that the entrance is on the backside of a space station, which it isn't. I think a lot of people who've played the Commodore 64 version has activated their docking computer, gone out to make some coffee or tea or whatever, and come back to a game over screen. It happens. It's not something that happens often, but it definitely happens. On the Amiga version, if you have the fast docking computer, as I said, you just instantly get, or you instantly dock. What did I mention now? If I didn't, I've mentioned it now. You instantly dock, which is a nice quality of life improvement. Other things the Amiga version gives you is an ID function. Gives you an idea of how many shots are required to take out different targets, and more importantly, it gives you an idea of if you can use missiles against them or not. On the Commodore 64 version, it is very random which crafts have got ECM systems that are used to blow up missiles. But on the Amiga version, the different crafts are fixed. Either they have ECM system or they do not. Targoids are credited with inventing the ECM system, so they definitely have them. If you look at the 3D radar, the bottom middle of the screen, there's another unique between the Commodore 64 and Amiga version. That could be present in other versions as well, but that is completely irrelevant. I'm only bothered with these two versions. Is that the different lines you can see on the radar are color-coded. Green dots lines are escape pods. The other ones are non-hostile vessels. Purpley lines are either asteroids or cargo containers. Red ones are missiles, just in case you see one. Bluish, gray bluish line dots things are enemy or hostile enemies. and a brown grayish lines on targets. Um, in the manual, there's this big story about how the Imperial Royal Navy, or whatever they're called, is fighting this constant battle against the target, and they're basically keeping them off your back. And if you bump into one, you have bumped into a stray one. In this fight, I bumped into 3 stray ones apparently. But, oh well. Showing off the fuel scoops in action. They are meant to have another purpose, but it was worked out that the magnetic nature of fuel scoops was very good at scooping up cargo canisters. So, Gecko, ECM system by the way, and a target, it definitely has got an ECM system, so can't use a missile against that one. That's something you learn after having played this game enough. I know how many points they give, I know how many credits they give, I know that they're most likely to drop cargo, and I know whether they have ECM or not. Trust me, I spent an awful lot of hours on this game. Nice inventory. Oops. And here is what I was referring to earlier. A target and 3 other vessels. My laser was not cooled down, so I'm not able to take out the target without overheating my lasers. That's not good. I will be using a missile on the Asp, which is the yellow craft, yellow-green craft. I got now. Or is that a Cobra Mark 1? I also think it's a Cobra Mark 1. The Mamba will die quickly, but yeah, a target who wants to kill you would kill you, so oops. Anyway, as I was saying before, quick rundown of the different upgrades you can get. Fuel only needed for hyperspace. Remember to restock. Missiles, target, fire, or would you blow something up? Restock as well. 15 tons extra cargo space. Normally you have 20 by default. This will expand to 35. ECM, electronic countermeasures used to blow up missiles, as I was saying. That includes your own. So if you have missiles on flight, you will destroy your own missiles as well. Pulse laser, forget it, doesn't exist. Rubbish. Move on to the next one, which is the beam laser. You definitely want that as one of the first upgrades on the Amiga version. You can get away with delaying it on the Commodore 64. Fuel scoops, I showed that in action before. That is the main use in game. Escape capsule, if things get too hot, you can escape your vessel and abandoning all cargo inside. Don't worry, the insurance policy will guarantee a new Cobra MK III. Energy bomb will blow up anything besides yourself and space stations, which is rather useful. Extra energy unit, it will make your shields and energy banks recharge faster, which is good for staying alive when you're under concentrated fire. I'm going to rush a bit through this so I can leave some time for saying or signing off, so to speak. So, docking computer said what that was doing earlier. So, next one, intergalactic hyperdrive. It is a special drive you use to change galaxy, and sometimes you'll be told to move to another galaxy. One use item, 5,000 credits. Next up will be the mining laser. You can use the mining laser to shoot asteroids to scoop up minerals. Basically a pointless waste of time, so I wouldn't bother. Military laser, As soon as you can afford one, you want one. They are super powerful, and they will definitely benefit you to have one. Retro rockets is, for these two versions, Amiga specific item. It will send your vessels flying backwards. You get 5 uses for 8,000 credits, and I've only ever found one place where I actually want to use them, so not worth the cost. On that note, I hope you found this somewhat interesting, so I will say thanks for watching, take care, and see you next time. Bye bye for now.